Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Karin Helmstedt.
Hello there and welcome to our highlights edition. That's our top stories of the week. And here's a look at what we've got lined up for today's program. Flamboyant, an exhibition on experimental footwear opens in Leipzig. Nostalgic, Frankfurt-based Dirk Krecker and his typewriter art. Artistic, Anthony McCall is lighting up the skies over Hamburg. Well, they do say a woman can never have enough shoes, and in that department, it seems that designers can never have enough ideas. A brand new exhibition in Leipzig, in eastern Germany, is a real treat for anyone with a faible for shoes, and it shows that they're not only a favorite accessory for women, but also a real playing field for architects, artists, and designers.
Here, the boundaries between art and craft are blurred. Recyclable shoes from a 3D printer. A tribute to U.S. artist Keith Haring. Some models, like these by architect Zaha Hadid, are constructed like buildings. Experiments with shapes and materials, some of them simply unwearable. Lisa Snook, the exhibition's Dutch co-curator, is an avid shoe collector herself.
We are in between design and art. What I like about it, it's a daily object. You use them. You have to protect your feet. You have to walk on them, and it can also be an art object at the same time. And with a pair of shoes, you can totally change your outfit or your image.
Leipzig's Grossi Museum is currently exhibiting more than 200 footwear creations. There's a critical comment on the leather industry and structural engineering applied to high heels. Pop star Lady Gaga once danced in these double boots. And designer shoes also grace Beyoncé's feet. A trained shoemaker makes sure they're wearable.
There are not a lot of artisans or makers. There should be more because there are a lot of people who have crazy ideas and want them out there.
Like Jochen Kronier. Two of his pairs are also on show in Leipzig. Here's the performer, costume, and shoe designer in his Berlin studio. He started designing footwear for himself 20 years ago because he couldn't find what he wanted from other stores and suppliers.
I performed on stage for many years, and I could sew my own costumes, make wigs, and do makeup. But shoes were always a problem.
Joey Love, his onstage alter ego, had to look eccentric from top to toe. So Kronier taught himself the craft of shoemaking, step by step. In 1995, before they became fashionable on the catwalk, he designed his first heelless platform boots. They eventually developed into this pony boot.
Now here you see it's a shoe. But as soon as the spats are on, it looks like a hoof.
He started getting orders from theaters, fashion agencies, and show business clients. Among them, German singer Nina Hagen. A pair of Kronier shoes costs between 1,500 and 5,000 euros. They're unique and all custom-made of leather, wood, rubber, and neoprene, using a process he developed himself. To make sure his customers don't get any blisters, he consults an orthopedic shoemaker.
He's given me a few pointers, how to cushion them and make them softer inside. What people in orthopedics have to do that people in the fashion industry don't do at all. I think it's important if you're walking on high shoes like these that they fit your foot comfortably. The moment that shoes like these feel like trainers, you can also walk in them. Not just for 1 or 2 hours, but all night at a party.
Allegedly, you can even dance in these creations. Lady Gaga shows how it's done. Extreme shoes like these certainly aren't for everyday wear, but if they're properly crafted, models and performers can even walk on incredibly high heels for a short time. Shoemakers such as René van der Berg from Belgium are continuing to push back the limits.
The things that are made for the catwalk are really trying to find the edges of what's still possible. That's the basic thing that the designers want from me, because with my skills and the way I work, they also challenge me in pushing limits. Because, well, you can design anything, but make it wearable. That's another.
Obviously, this 9-meter-long shoe isn't meant to be worn, but it seems to be providing Jochen Kronier with inspiration for his next creation.
Well, it's one of the most famous landmarks in the heart of Paris, the Cathedral of Notre Dame. And it's also home to one of French literature's most poignant heroes, and that would be the hunchback Quasimodo. Well, last week saw the city kick off celebrations for Notre Dame's 850th anniversary. And no doubt even Quasimodo himself would have shed a tear to know that his beloved bells have been lovingly restored for the occasion.
This is the sound of Notre Dame's new bells, rung for the first time on the weekend before Easter. Laurent Prades is director of Notre Dame. He is the person responsible for planning and organising major events at the cathedral. He spent 3 years overseeing the new bells project. At the end of the 18th century, the chimes of Notre Dame were known for their extraordinary quality. The stars of the Hunchback of Notre Dame films like Charles Laughton and Anthony Quinn shaped the image that most people have of the Notre Dame bell ringers.
In past centuries, we've had many good bell ringers whose names were well known. It was a job that was often passed down from father to son. But from the 1930s, it was all done electronically, at the touch of a button. That's not quite as romantic as it was when it took 40 people back in the 18th century. Nowadays, it's done by a computer.
In 1831, Victor Hugo wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the story of ill-fated love between the famous bell ringer Quasimodo and the beautiful Esmeralda. It's been adapted for the cinema many times. Early silent films used documentary footage of the cathedral. Others used a painted background to bring the world-famous images to the big screen. Only one movie, starring Anthony Quinn, was filmed on location at the Parisian cathedral. Even the artists of this cartoon went to great lengths to reproduce every minute detail of Notre Dame. These films have kept the cathedral in the public eye.
When the story was written in the 1930s, the cathedral was practically in ruins. It was so badly damaged that there was a danger it was going to be demolished. The novel brought that situation to public attention, and the cathedral was saved. And besides, the novel's a masterpiece. Victor Hugo is one of the greatest French authors.
In its own way, the novel helped to restore Notre Dame to its former glory. Today, around 14 million tourists from all around the world come to see the Gothic masterpiece every year.
This building transcends religion. It's amazing. One of the reasons we came to Paris was to see this.
Well, it's certainly central to Paris and Paris's identity. I mean, in some respects, it's the heart and soul of Paris and the beginning of Paris, in fact.
Notre Dame is known all over. Everyone knows it. It's great that people all around the world talk about a monument that in many ways stands for France's history.
Notre Dame's 850th anniversary will be celebrated with events throughout the year. And, of course, they'll all be accompanied by the sound of the new bells.
Well, the usual tools for artists and painters have traditionally been things like paintbrushes and pencils. But these days, many artists like to find a tool or even a material that makes their work unique. And if you remember the old-fashioned manual typewriters, well, Frankfurt-based artist Dirk Krecker uses that with strips of paper to create some compelling contemporary artwork. And his grids of characters in black and red form a picture that's like a modern-day narrative.
Dirk Krekker's sentences, phrases and single letters run into one another, overlap and cover one another in an apparently arbitrary way. But a step back reveals a bigger picture, quite literally. On closer observation, there is some method to this jumble of words and letters. They are Dirk Krekker's typewriter drawings, and in the truest sense of the word, they are a description of topics that are central to modern life.
I'm interested in the landscape we live in, the urban space that surrounds us. Everything's permanently in motion or being changed. Appointments aren't fixed. We're communicating the whole time. We are a massive network. And this unrest, this state of permanent flux, this lack of stationariness is an integral part of our urban space. And that aspect is very important to me.
Dirk Krecker discovered the typewriter as a stylistic device while studying design. He's been typing pictures since 1997. After years of practice, he makes it look like child's play. But for larger format pictures, Krecker can sit up to 6 weeks at the typewriter. He'll make rough drafts with fragments of newspaper articles, news pictures, and with his own emotions before refeeding the piece of paper again and again to build up type.
I didn't want to draw by hand, that wasn't my thing. But at the same time, I didn't want to leave everything up to a machine, like with a computer. For a while, I was torn between photography and wondering if there was something else. That's how I found the typewriter, by doing some wild experimenting.
Krecker was born in Frankfurt, and that's where he still lives and works. His studio is situated close to Central Station in an area which has something of a dubious reputation for drug dealing and prostitution. But it inspires Krecker as much as the familiar skyline of Frankfurt's financial center.
I grew up in the city. I love it. I can't imagine living in the country. I like getting out, but I love coming back to my city and my studio. This is where my life happens. This is where I meet people. And there's a density here that I see as a quality. I get to see an amazing amount of life out there just by walking 2 streets.
Typewriters that Dirk Krecker uses for his artwork aren't collector's items. He was given most of them or bought them for a few euros at flea markets. Each model has its own typography and its own style. The typewriter, with its roots in the 18th century, is an anachronism in this age of the computer.
The typewriter is from a time that had a lot to do with modernity. It brought huge advances to the whole process of letter writing, and in that regard, it is linked to what's happening in digitization. It was an intermediate step on the path of speeding things up.
Dirk Krekker's works fetch up to 9,000 euros. They reflect his view of the world today, critical yet fascinating. Dirk Krecker says his voyage of discovery through urban space is by no means complete.
Well, every lamp in Katrin Grigull's showroom is made to serve two purposes, to shed light, but also to be a work of art. Her lamps are design objects and mainly inspired by Asian paper lamps. And the Berlin workshop where she develops her creations is called Loupiote, which is the French for a small or dim light. But her lamps shine brightly, and so does their reputation as they adorn many a trendy establishment here in the capital.
Shapes that are simple yet still eye-catching. Berlin's Rio Grande restaurant boasts 4 large and 11 small round lampshades designed by Katrin Grigull. The designer wants her light fixtures to create a pleasant ambiance. Grigull's been making them to order in her studio in Berlin's Kreuzberg district for 17 years now.
I think light fixtures have to be purist. Our world is incredibly overstimulated with lots of colors and insanely complicated forms. That's why I use pure, simple shapes that are soothing.
Bauhaus, Renoval, and Fravashi are some of the names Katrin Grigull has given her paper lampshades. They're made of material that won't burn or discolor, even when used with 400-watt bulbs. Each lamp is unique, crafted from handmade paper, and costs between 70 and 5,000 euros. The lampshades are the heart of her creations and are inspired by a variety of associations.
I call this model Peplon Dry. Peplon is a Greek woman cinched in with several belts. This model is often called a waterfall, because once it's all covered in pleats, it looks like a waterfall when you hang it up.
Katrin Grigull often works with handmade paper. This type from the Himalayas, with its noticeable texture, is especially suited to appliques. So is this Japanese paper that's interwoven with thread. Grigull applies paste to the surface of the paper to make it more robust. Mounting the wet paper on the frame requires meticulous care to ensure it doesn't tear. Katrin Grigull uses industrial-produced Japanese washi paper most frequently.
What's special about this is the evenness of its structure. Plus, the rolls are 30 meters long, so the paper puts no limits on the size of the lampshades.
Grigull lights can be found in celebrity homes and elegant restaurants. Most are made using previously designed forms, like these in the restaurant Eckbert's Faux in Berlin. But some clients order entirely new shapes. Katrin Grigull was an actress and stunt woman until she designed a light for a restaurant without thinking much about it. Then people started asking for more of them.
These lights can be extremely bright and provide strong illumination without seeming terribly heavy. And if you use them with a dimmer, you can have subdued light and enjoy an evening in a cozy atmosphere.
Every Grigull lampshade is handcrafted. Katrin Grigull produces no more than 30 models per year, focusing on quality rather than quantity.
Well, Well, up now to Hamburg in northern Germany, where the IBA, or International Building Exhibition, kicked off just last week. Now, that's an annual show that aims to generate new ideas on how to shape the future of urban living. Well, one of its main artistic attractions this time is an installation by British light artist Anthony McCall. And although he's based over in New York, he's chosen to illuminate Germany's Elbe River. And Crossing the Elbe, as his installation is called, is intended to touch every edge and corner of the city.
Even Hamburg's most outlying districts have been incorporated into this work of art, in which mighty beams of light crisscross all over the city. Exactly 90 minutes after sunset, the urban landscape becomes a projection space for British artist Anthony McCall. Crossing the Elbe is the name of his minimalist installation.
It's a quite humid day, and when that gives us this slight opening out of the beam. On a drier day, we'll have more of a pencil, and on a very, very humid day, we'll have it quite spread. And for me, it's working very well. I'm very... the fact that it doesn't move is very important, I think. It's completely static for 21 minutes.
For the next year, the residents of Hamburg will see the light installation as this animation shows wherever they are in the city. But they'll only be able to see part of it. And that's the core to Anthony McCall's concept, a very reduced project.
One's understanding of what the work is will be built up from dozens and dozens of fragments, seen in various ways at various times with different degrees of attention, perhaps, over a whole year.
Coming from London, Anthony McCall is well aware of how different life can be north and south of the river. And that's what this artwork is all about. It's a theme that's also picked up at the IBA, or International Construction Exhibition in Hamburg. The show looks at the future of urban planning and how residential building in cities can be both sustainable and financially viable at the same time. The IBA is taking place all over Hamburg, but especially in socially disadvantaged areas, such as Wilhelmsburg. The plan is to equip them for the future and narrow the urban development gap between these districts and the smart inner-city areas within the Harbor District.
It's about connecting entire districts more closely with Hamburg City, to focus more on areas like Wilhelmsburg and Harburg, which have slipped out of public consciousness in recent decades. And an art project like this is a unique opportunity to put those places back on the map.
Using the city as one huge projection space, Anthony McCall draws on some of his early works from the 1970s. Back then, he used liquid gas to fuel fires amid the landscape that would burn for a predetermined amount of time.
It was, for me, a way of creating a durational structure over time, as much as a thing in space.
Time and space are also key factors in his later installations and experimental films. In this work, light rays form geometric figures in a space, creating sculptures of ephemeral light that appear to be palpable but aren't. Anthony McCall's installation in Hamburg is also a reference to works like that, even though at first glance, the observer might think his latest work is lacking some of the poetry. Anyone who looks closely, as the artist himself does, will delight in the subtle changes. All through the year, the lights will change position once every week, as this animated film shows.
The change of position for the beams themselves is because I want the lines of light to visit every neighborhood, all the different neighborhoods of Hamburg, to move around the city. That's the main thing.
Art easily makes that leap across the Elbe. And for a year,
Anthony McCall's work will remind the people of Hamburg of the city's diversity on both sides of the river.
And that does bring us to the end of our Euromaxx highlights. We hope you enjoyed it, and until we meet again, all the best from us here in the studio in Berlin. Tschüss, auf Wiedersehen, and bye-bye.